today's video we are going to be making the front of this panel for the International B414 bonnet. So this is my second ever time trying to make a corner piece. So I'm just trialing one method and you're going to see now what it is. So the first thing I'm going to do is using my 3M 3434 tape. I will leave everything I'm using down below in case anyone is looking at, and basically I just put it around the bonnet, making sure to really push it down into all the nooks and crannies, and then there I was just cutting it to make it flat. Now from doing this I've got some tips and tricks from my other social medias, and people say that you should cut actually smaller gaps to get a better sort of curve on it. They say like 10mm gaps, so I'm going to try that next time I do it. As you see here, just cleaning off the bit of metal that I'm going to be using with my large wire wheel, and then sticking on the template, and then I just marked around the template just in case that template did lift up, so then I definitely had, the markings that I needed. Now I'm just using a floppy disk and I'm just bringing that metal right up to the tape mark. I'm using then my cutting disc to cut into all them little grooves here. The only thing, if you're going to be doing this, make sure you take it nice and slow, because on smaller areas the steel will really heat up and can actually warp. So just going in between the cutting disc and the floppy disk just to make that shape. But I absolutely love using tape as my template. It's working out really well so far, so I think I'm going to continue using it. The proper way, I believe, for making this corner is using a power hammer and a leather sandbag, and then using the English wheel and maybe some shrinker and stretchers. So that is the other method that I need to try. Now, actually forming it to the bonnet, I just used a variety of methods. So the first thing I did there was just use my body and just push it into a rough kind of curve, and then just pushed around all them little tabs. I am using my steel toe cap, but there, yes, professional here. And then just using my mallet, because I realized it's actually the same sort of shape that I need, and it worked out really well. Then I'm just switching between a mallet and a steel hammer. Here I'm using a little dolly just to kind of make that curve just a little bit better. Because of this overlap, there's material underneath this, so this can't sit exactly flush. So we're gonna cut that. Making a slit so that steel can sit nicely on top, or well, not on top, sit actually onto the bonnet so I can get a better shape. And here I am then just using the metal hammer. So the difference between a metal hammer and a rubber mallet is the metal hammer can sometimes leave little indents, so I try to use the rubber mallet as much as possible. But as you can see here, it actually came out a really good fit. I was very proud of this because, as I said, it's only my second ever time doing this. So now taking off the template, and I saved that. It's like a little momentum of like what I did. Then I'm just using my angle grinder and cutting disc, and I'm just going through them cuts just to make sure there's enough gapping for when I weld, because when you weld it shrinks the metal. So just going over them to make sure there's a nice perfect gap. And then the welding starts. So when I was actually filming, every time I seem to set up my camera, my welds are just absolutely rubbish, but here it is what it is. Turned off the camera, turned down actually the welder. It was just running a little bit too hot and just kept blowing through, and it welded fine. Now this is not the prettiest of welds. It's literally just welding it together to make sure it actually sticks. There was a little bit of a gap in one of them, so I did have to get a little bit of metal to actually fill it in, as it was too much of a gap to actually weld, and that's what I was pushing down with my hammer there. It was just sticking up. But the good thing is about welding, no matter if the welds are not the best, your grinder will make them look pretty good. So again, just using a floppy disk, taking my time going over all, because there was a lot of heat generated obviously in this small area, and the metal's already stretched, so it is quite weak. Then using my hammer there just to bring the welds back up. I am trying to get better at finishing my welds, as I feel like that's where I'm really struggling. But now that's all done, as you see, I did spray painted. This is a different day. I just went around with my Sharpie and just marked out on the bonnet. So because it was already not cut out, there was a lot of actually sanding down to do. I think the next time I do this as well, I'm going to cut out what actually needs done first. Put tape over it and then cut that out and then make the template from that. Because yeah, there's just a little bit more cutting out to do. So went around with Sharpie first and then got my little scribe and cut that out, because usually when you're sanding down the area to make sure the panel fits, I would go right up to that little tiny scribe mark, because that brings it to the exact location. So another thing I learnt while doing this was the lovely 90-degree corners there are all well and good, but when it actually comes to sanding it, it can be quite difficult to get in them corners. So if anyone has any tips on how to get better corners to make it easier to weld, please do leave it down below. So once that's all marked up, obviously got my angle grinder, cutting disc, and this is a very worrying shot. Like, look where all them sparks were going. This is why I wear all the PPE that I need. Anyway, yeah, just took my time, went around obviously the part and cut it out. And yeah, here is the old one. As you can see, very holy, very rusty, a bit nasty, but this power tractor has been around a long time. So now here I am with my other angle grinder with my flappy disc on, and here I'm just bringing the metal to that scribe mark to make sure it fits as best possible. And then I did actually end up using my 10mm, is it finger sander, if you call it, belt sander, something like that. Yeah, just to try to get into them corners, and it did do the job, but I think I need different sandpaper. This is just the brown one, but I think I need the blue one, which is like zirconium or something like that, and this is like oxide, the random things that you know. After I did all that and it was actually fitting, there was a lot of trial and error, as I said, but you don't need to see all that. I got my wire wheel and just went around the whole perimeter of it, obviously to make a good earth, is that what it's called? So when you're actually welding, you should also do the underside of the bonnet, but I did not, because as you can see, the underside of the bonnet isn't coated in any epoxy. It's protected in built hammer, Hydrate 80, which is a rust inhibitor. And then I also just cleaned obviously the panel, and this is the gapping. So a little bit of dolly work was needed just to straighten that front bit of the panel, because the front bit of this bonnet is just, I don't know what happened to it, it's just all over the place. A little bit too much gapping there at the back, and then a little bit tight up here at the top. So yeah, it's just all trial and error, and that little hole there did cause me some issues, if you've seen there at the top. Getting to that corner up there, it just got really thin. So as you can see, I'm just putting some spot welds in, taking my time, making sure the panel all sits flush, and then once I have all them little tacks in, I then just went ahead and spot welded it. And once I felt like the panel maybe was getting a bit too hot, I just used the airline. it's also positioned between my legs in a very dodgy looking spot, but anyway, a lot of mixed opinions online of using an airline. I have personally found out if I have a blow through and I'm putting a lot of heat in one area, that you cannot use the airline because it will crack. It did happen to me in this, I didn't show it, but at the very right there it did end up cracking. But other than that, for the little spot welds, it's fine. So here is it all welded up. I'm very proud of my welds. They're getting a lot better. Again, not perfect. Some are a little bit higher than others. Still I'm getting some blow throughs. But overall, I'm very, very impressed of how my welding has progressed. Well, over the last, I don't even know how many weeks, months, whatever. Then back to floppy disk. So I'm using the floppy disk here just to take the majority of the highs off. And then I don't think I showed it, but I did do a little bit of hammer and dolly work just to bring them back up. But again, it's not the best. It's not the best work you'll ever see. I am a little bit disappointed in this panel. You know, I thought it would turn out a little bit better. I don't like the way you see there in the corners where all the slits are. But that's what Isapon's for. But that's not what I want. So if you have any comments on how to improve it, please leave them down below and like and subscribe. Thanks.